everyone, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me today. This is going to be a reading for Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Rising for the middle of October to the end of the month. So let's jump in and see what messages we have for Cancer as they move through their month. Ooh, okay, start with this card. A deep breath. Beautiful uncaging. And wish upon a star. Okay, Cancer. Okay, so the combination of these three cards is very interesting because the idea of this card here, a deep breath, is really suggesting that it's time to look at what you're afraid of. What is keeping you in fight or flight? And I mean, that's not hard to imagine considering what's going on in the world. There's certainly a lot of things and messaging coming out that are I think designed to keep people in the fear mode, that fight or flight mode where you feel like there is some sort of threat around every corner, and that there is this recommendation from this card that it's time to sort of take a breath and trust that everything in the universe is sort of trying to get you to trust and release that fear and step out of that idea that you need to be in fight or flight. Now, the fascinating thing with that is that this card, the beautiful uncaging, is really about setting yourself free. It's about setting yourself free from fear, from guilt, from any sort of limiting perspective that you have. So that's two messages, and it's interesting because this is a 7 and this is a 14. And I just think that's really interesting that you're sort of being guided right off the bat here, Cancer, to uncage yourself by taking a deep breath and surrendering the fear that you might be holding on to. Because here, this wish upon a star card is really asking you to look at your deepest desires and to see what is it that you want to bring in. What is it? What's your star? I love this card, the way the star is just being held so close to the heart center here, because it really is a time to sort of reflect on what is the greatest desire that you hold, as opposed to focusing so much on your fear. And I know that right now there's so many messages and so much almost encouragement that we should be afraid and that we should be in fight or flight and that we're in danger and that we need to protect ourselves and that we're at risk. It's like, man, it just feels like this is the time to surrender the fear and to trust even more that the universe has got us covered, regardless of what we may think or feel, regardless of what we might be afraid of. It's actually time to focus on the daydreams and to focus on the desires and to trust that dreams can become reality. So what are you dreaming about? And if you're like, you see what I mean? Like if you stay in fear mode, it's almost like that's what you're going to get more of. And so by surrendering the fear and taking a breath to sort of snap out of that fight or flight, we're almost in a better position to bring in what we desire. Not almost, we are. We will be in a better position out of fear to bring in and manifest the things that we desire most. And we can do that outside of just our individual self. We can think about that collectively. Okay, and so when we think about that collectively, for the collective of humanity, we could really uncage here. This is really interesting. What's keeping you feeling caged up? You know, I'm sensing that we have a fear, a panic, a sense of urgency here because we are in flight or fight mode. Fight or flight, sorry. But is there anything else? Could there be some guilt here? I some of my conversations with other people that are, spiritually inclined have been saying that they're struggling a little bit with guilt because as the people around them in their lives are very afraid and feeling really sort of restricted and limited and narrowing their focus, people's focus is expanding. And so there can somehow be this idea of, we feel guilty that we're expanding while other people are contracting, and so it's time to uncage yourself, uncaging that heart, uncaging the emotions, setting yourself free. Setting yourself free, Cancer. That seems to be the theme here for you. Now, let's see what will support Cancer this throughout their month. Card just flew on the floor. What will support Cancer as they move through their month? Whoa, 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 easy, easy, easy. Okay. Okay, we got the one off the floor was love and taking risks and thriving. Interesting. Yeah, this is really an interesting time where I think people are feeling almost a little bit afraid to thrive. They're fearful of thriving in a situation where everyone else is feeling really afraid. But here's that message. Approaching the situation from love rather than fear will set your heart free. You will uncage yourself with love, not fear. You will thrive with love, not fear. You can take a risk and not be afraid, right? It's interesting. It's almost like if you're not walking around afraid right now, you're like, people will look at you and I don't know. It's interesting. It's like if you're feeling like you have hope and you're not afraid and you're just living your life, it's interesting. I feel like that is unnerving and almost triggering to others. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's a trigger to people if and it makes sense, because if you're living your life in fear and then all of a sudden someone walks in who's thriving, they're not afraid, they feel like everything is going to work out and that everything is happening in a divine timing and that there's nothing to fear. We just have to sort of maintain our future intention and thrive and find a way to focus on love rather than fear. That can be incredibly triggering for others if they're sitting in a fear, that lower vibration of fear rather than the highest vibration, which is love. And so it's interesting. And this idea of taking a risk, I feel like it is taking a risk, because man, you are vulnerable when you're not afraid. It's interesting. You're vulnerable to others. Like people sometimes get very triggered when they see that you're not afraid. It's like misery loves company, doesn't it? And so it's interesting. If you're approaching things from a place of love rather than fear, you might find yourself spending some time without the same people. You might find yourself needing to take a risk in doing that and maybe being a little unpopular initially. Okay, let's see here, Cancer. The Star card. Yes. Very, very interesting. So yeah, your major situation right now is surrounding this idea that you're taking care of your body. You have a lot of faith in yourself. You're a star and you know it. You know it. I feel like Cancer is living in a place right now where they're not afraid. And the only obstacle around them right now are the fearful and are those who can't accept that this is something that we all need to sort of manage on a more intuitive level than we have been, right? This idea of accepting a truth before you move forward. And I feel like it's the truth that you're struggling with accepting here is that it's okay, if your world gets a little bit smaller because you're not afraid, and I feel like you're going to be thriving. I feel like you're going to be thriving and that it won't be a challenge for you to accept that, but it could involve taking a risk because, like I said, you could be triggering people, Cancer, with your love and your lack of fear and your ability to breathe through this situation and focus on your desires. I mean, that can be incredibly triggering for people that are living in fear. Yeah, like your mindset, Cancer, is very much of I trust the timing of this. I trust the timing. I will thrive. I am focusing on love, not fear. I'm staying mindful and I'm grounded. And I know that I am blessed. I feel like that is your mindset right now, Cancer. And what's driving this reading is the idea that you want to take your vision that you are holding that is fearless. You want to take a risk and connect that vision to the external world. Both of these cards are so fiery in their imagery. It really makes me think that you're being inspired to do something. And that's also coming through here. But it's like, don't let the fear get you. Don't let the fear squash your desires. Don't let it happen. Keep yourself uncaged using love and breath and like whatever it takes. I was doing this meditation the other day, and the guide who was guiding us through the meditation just kept telling us to imagine seeing through it. See through it. Don't let the fear take hold of you. Just see through it. See past it. It's a very interesting concept of sort of allowing your visualization of your circumstance change in your mind, and that it can actually help connect things to the external world. When you visualize things, your mind doesn't really know if you saw it or not. It just sees it, and it becomes the vibration. And so I feel like you are going to be working through that. But it's interesting. I feel like you're surrounded by energy that is opposing you. And so this idea of needing to stay uncaged and focus on your desires and sort of surrender fear to get out of fight or flight, I think is going to be triggering to others. And that is interesting. Yeah. 7 of Swords in reverse. I feel like it has been a struggle for you. You've almost just wanted to run off because the energy around you is so fearful based. And it's rubbing off on you almost, isn't it, Cancer? It's like you can feel it and you don't like it. So you're like, you know what? I'm just going to grab my swords and get the heck out of here. I don't want to be here for this anymore. And it's sort of this idea of like, how diplomatic do you have to be? Do you have to pretend to be a little afraid so that people don't get so triggered? Or what? Or do you just take off and then you don't have anything to do with the external world anymore? It's very interesting. You are getting the message here of taking a risk. So I feel like the risk that you will be taking is the idea of sort of partnering with spirit, which I can see in your upcoming energy here, is that you are going to be sort of handed an invitation to begin a relationship with your higher self. And so that you can find a way to formulate a new beginning towards this vision that you want to create, right? And I feel like you're going to take those steps in the very upcoming future. You're going to start to take those steps, but that it's interesting. The reading is giving you sort of a guidance to say, as you do this, if you encounter a lot of resistance from individuals that are in fight or flight or are in fear or make you feel guilty for having desires and fulfilling them in a time where everyone else is running in fear, then your job is to stay focused with the breath, stay focused on the vision that you have, the desire, the fulfillment of that desire through the connection of your vision, right? And you're partnering with spirit here. Now, it's interesting. I feel like your inner dialogue, though, is like, I'm not talking to anybody about anything right now, because if I do, yeah, you're triggering people, aren't you, Cancer? You're triggering people with your love. You're triggering people because you're not in fight or flight. You're thriving. You're thriving. And instead of being inspired by you, people are triggered by you because they're like, how is that person not afraid of what's going on in the world right now? And it's, there is this deep segregation in the collective right now. And it's like, yeah, you're holding your cards close to your chest, and that might not be a bad idea because, although you're operating on a level of love, if you're finding that the people around you are still in fear and you're triggering them, if that trigger is causing an outlash, like they're lashing out at you, a part of me is feeling like, then keep your cards close to your chest. But then another part of me is like, well, but if we don't trigger, then how will the other people let go of their fear? It's interesting. It's an interesting sort of consideration, isn't it? Now, your outer sort of expressive part of yourself is really trying to balance the energy inside, and you might be really thinking about making a choice that's important towards the direction you take. So I feel like Cancer could be on the cusp of making a decision this month with respect to sort of going for this, really, really looking at what they desire and what the fulfillment is, how to feel fulfilled, and really taking that risk. I feel like this is about a choice that you might maybe move, you might relocate, you might step away from certain things that are not letting you thrive. And that will feel like a risk, but I feel like ultimately it will balance you. It will balance you so that your sort of inner self and your outer expression are congruent and not in opposition of one another, Yeah. Yeah. Now, yeah, this is the thing is, sorry, I'm looking at the card and talking to it, but your apprehension is that you want to transform. You're ready for it, but there's an apprehension on your part with respect to how much of this you share. Because I feel like Cancer, maybe you got bitten by someone who was really in fight or flight, and then they saw you thriving, and then they bit your head off. And so a part of you is sort of, again, like, I just want to keep this to myself, because I don't want anyone to sort of rain on my parade, or I don't want anyone to be triggered by me and then take it out on me. And so the idea of how open your cup is very interesting. This is a new emotional dimension that you're entering into. And I feel like it's going to be one where a part of you wants to keep your cup open to everyone emotionally, but a part of you is like, no, maybe this new dimension of emotion needs to be kept closer within for now. But I wonder, part of me is sort of feeling like that could sort of be the challenge for you in this, is that will you choose to express yourself openly, even if you trigger people? Interesting, Cancer. Yeah, you're still of two minds of this. You're still feeling the opposing forces. You're like, I want to belong. I want to be part of the group. I don't want to be all by myself. But at the same time, I want to be authentic. And I want to speak from the place of authenticity that I'm sitting in. But you also want to belong, right? These are pentacles. So that speaks to your sense of security, your identity, your I belong statements. And I feel like you're at a place where, even though you're full of this desire, and you're vibrating at a place of love, not fear, you're still not sure how much of this to express in the physical world, because you're going to be triggering people. And I'm sort of the mind of, if they're triggered, then you've sort of done them a service, because when we're triggered, then we can maybe open the door to look at a different perspective. But sometimes being triggered, it becomes a very emotional reaction, and then you just end up exploding. And so that might be the backlash that you're trying to avoid. But, in a lot of my own sort of personal introspective moments, I have often felt like, no, we have to speak our truth, even if we trigger people, because otherwise we're hiding. And I haven't flushed it out completely for myself yet, but that's sort of what I'm feeling for you too, is the dilemma that you're facing, is that how authentic do you be? How much of this do you keep close to the chest? How much of this do you invite others into at this time, when everyone is freaking out around you and you're calm? You can see the pros and cons on that. You can see that You could be taking a big risk by sort of allowing the trigger to happen, because you could get backlashed on. But I feel like you're thriving and you should just live your best life and shine your light as bright as you can, Cancer, because we need it. We need it now more than ever, you know? All right, I'm going to leave it at that for you, Cancer. If this has resonated and you'd like a personal reading, you can contact me. My email is in the description below. And as always, thank you so much for liking, subscribing, and watching. And we'll see you again very soon for another reading. Have a great month, you guys. Sending you lots of love and light.